So this is going to be part one in this sort of mini series. And people are going to call me a nihilist for starting this series, but when we get deeper into it, you will realise that it's sort of not. I don't want to say it's not all doom and gloom because a large percentage of it is, but there is some light at the end of the tunnel, and you know, not in the Zizek way of the light at the end of the tunnel being a train. No, that's not what I mean. Although I suppose there is an aspect of that. So what I'm going to start talking about, anyway, enough fooling around, is it's going to be a bit of a multi-part series on the collapse of human society as we know it. Now that can mean an apocalypse, or it can mean a dramatic reshuffling of our social systems, our hierarchical systems, our economic systems. These are all topics that will come into play here. But what I'm sort of here to talk about, and I was going to use the word warn, but it would be completely fruitless to use the word warn in the context of what I'm going to talk about here on this recording. So it's no denying the fact that human evolution is progressing towards a stage where the very foundations upon which it was founded on are being slowly eroded away by narcissists. It's the way millions and millions of generations before us have fallen. The thing is, in any human society, I don't know whether or not it's the same for specific animals or groups of individuals, but there is a ratio system that comes into play, a ratio of people born with brain defects in a way that makes them manipulative and sociopathic. So you can account that for about 50% of the population. And then there is another quota of people on the other end of the spectrum who are completely virtuous, and have no sin, if you want to call it that. I'm not speaking in a religious context here because, to be honest, the context of this talk, it doesn't really matter if you're religious or not. It would still apply. And then there's another substrata of people who are in the middle, and this is where the majority fall, where they are incredibly virtuous people until they are given access to means beyond their understanding in a way that sort of creates a defect within their mind that, well, causes them to become the other 50%. And so, realistically speaking, the only way for humanity to avoid catastrophe and societal collapse is if those two substratas of people, the sociopaths and the sort of somewhat virtuous individuals, were to not exist, and it would only be the virtuous individuals left. But that's never going to happen. It's a fact. It is the folly of man. when people say things are the folly of man, well, what I'm telling you now is the downfall of humanity. This is our biggest fatal flaw, and what will ultimately lead towards societal collapse. Now, we've seen this springing up, and I'm going to put this into the context of political temperament. I don't like to discuss these sort of things on a political basis because it can sound biased and misconstrued, but there obviously, as we know, if you watch a lot of Jordan Peterson and other speakers like him, there are two political temperaments. You have right leaning and left leaning. Left leaning being the liberal ideology, and right leaning being the conservative ideology. Now, of course, there are other ideologies, Marxism, neoconservatism, things like that. But liberalism and conservatism are the basis that I'm going to found this idea off of, because they are the most prevalent of all of the ideologies. So this is the first method in which human society can come into collapse, and what is already happening now is what I'm going to call the liberal catastrophe, right? So political ideologies and go a lot deeper than just did you vote Republican or Democrat, right? It comes down to the temperament of the individual and what's called political psychology, right? So if it depends on things like creativity and imagination, and I'm not going to get into what defines a conservative and what defines a liberal, because it's a very deep and intricate thing that would take a lot of time to explain. But predominantly, I will explain the roles. So conservatives are there because they are of a more traditional mind. They have a way of thinking which suggests that if something has been tried before and worked, it is something within which human society should continue with, and that the lines outside of the tried methods of humanity should never be crossed. So that's why they're very often reluctant to break away from tradition. Now, a liberal thinks the same way in the sense that he respects hierarchical and social structures that have worked in the past, but believe in a sense of progressivism and postmodernism. So they believe that fundamentally we need to explore other avenues, because the traditional methods may be there could be methods more sustainable than those of the traditional methods. And I'm not here to shame or derelict either of those ways of thinking today. They are both completely valid ways of seeing the world. But it comes down to temperament, right? So, what is the crisis of the left? And that is, so the left obviously will campaign for more progressive campaigns, such as legal homosexual marriage, um, you know, uh, greater gun controls and legalization and or decriminalization of prohibited substances. So that's where a liberal would show up, so to speak, in society. And so the problem with the liberals are, nowadays anyway, it's never been a problem in the past, is that they desire an egalitarianism which is beyond the mechanisms of our societies. And it comes from a very virtuous place, right? This idea that if we can be as egalitarian as possible, then no suffering in the world would exist, or at least it would be significantly hindered. But what's happened now is the egalitarianism is moving towards the past, the line of what is ultimately the correct level of egalitarianism to maintain a functional society. And you have to level these things out, because too much egalitarianism will fall into authoritarianism, and it's this idea of equality of outcome rather than equality of opportunity, which I'm sure everyone listening will know the difference between the two. But sorry, just give me a minute. But in doing this, what will happen is, to counteract this, we need to say to them that they are stepping past this point of human functioning. And that would be to completely end the main goal of the left, or people with that ideology, which is something that ultimately we can never allow to happen. It would be catastrophic, because then they would stop making strides towards egalitarianism, and we would see more segregative policies start to come back into play. So that would be catastrophic for humanity. But also, if we continue accelerating down this path of complete and total equality of outcome as opposed to equality of opportunity, what will happen is an acceleration towards a worldwide state of authoritarian rule, where it is forced upon an individual or an agency or a group that they need to be as egalitarian as possible. And ultimately, when that does happen, there would be no way out of it, because and well, you could just say we would be able to revolt, and no, we wouldn't. And I'll tell you why now: because it would be nationwide, and it would resemble Eurasia and Oceania. So that's the first one. If you want to carry on listening, that's fine. The next segment will be coming up now, but